What's going on, everybody? Welcome to CNA Customs. My name is Tayson, and today I have an idea. So a while back I welded my mom a little elephant out of random nuts and washers and bolts that I had found. I'll throw in a short little video right here if you guys want to see. If you want to see more pictures, just go check out my Instagram, CNA_customs. You'll see more pictures of that, as well as engine building, that other kind of stuff I do. When I gave that to her, my dad said he wanted a plane. So that's what I'm here today to do. I was sitting here at my cluttered desk and I was trying to think of how I could make a plane for him. And I realized that I've got a bunch of these old spark plugs that came out of this engine that I'm not going to reuse, and I think those would make a pretty cool fuselage for a plane. And I've got this old piece of sheet metal right here that I used for the base for the elephant to stand on for my mom. But I've got all this left over, and I think I could use this. It's pretty thin. I believe it's 16 gauge, and I think this would make good material for the wings as well as the rudder. So I'm gonna start taking some measurements and seeing how big I want the wings to be as well as the rudder. Because right now I really have no idea. I'm just gonna kind of eyeball it and see what looks good. Look who came to join me. Hey Duke. Hey Duke. He's a good boy. So after playing around with it for a little while, I think if I cut a 3-inch piece of material and then slap the spark plug right in the center, I think that would give me enough material on each side for the wings, and then obviously I'd shape them with a Dremel. But I think that's the size I want for the wings. And I think for the tail I'm going to cut about 1.5 inches of material, and that way on each side of the plug I've got about 3/4 inch. And for the rudder, I think I'm just going to try to find a washer that fits well and it's kind of the right size after I get the wings and the tail on there. So I went ahead and measured out and drew out the pieces. I'm doing them about 7/8 thick, and I think that'll give me plenty of material for the wings and for the tail, and then I'll shape them after they're cut out. I don't have a vise out here yet, but what I do have are these 2 pieces of steel. You can obviously see that this is the one that I weld on because of all the spatter, but this one's still perfectly clean. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to put the metal on there like that, sandwich it, and then I'm going to clamp it all together with this big pair of vice grips, and hopefully that'll hold it steady enough so that I can take a Dremel to it and cut these pieces out. Got to clamp down with these, and I think that's going to be steady enough for me to be able to cut it out. At some point I'm going to have an actual shop, and this will be much easier to do, but for now this is what I'm dealing with. I don't have a tripod, so what I'm doing is I'm using this old cardboard box. I stuck a couple nails in the top so I can sit my phone in there and hopefully give you guys a good view of what I'm doing over here. Alright, I think that's a pretty good view. Let's go ahead and get started. Alright, so I've cut it out. There we go, I've cut it out. I'm gonna go ahead and cut it right here where this mark is, separate the wing piece from the tail, and then I'm gonna go ahead and clean up all the edges. Alright, now that the pieces are cut out and I can lay them out like this, I think those sizes are going to work perfectly once I clean up all the rough edges from where the cuts were made, and once I shape them to actually look like wings instead of rectangles. So I'm not going to film me cleaning up all the edges because it's basically just going to be me taking a metal file to all the edges and probably taking a Scotch-Brite pad and or a wire brush to get all the surface rust, and if there's any mill scale, get all that kind of nasty stuff off so that it'll be clean for welding. I also might take this chance once I clean them up to draw out the shapes of the wings so that I can cut those out as well, and then I'll clean up those edges too. So once they're clean and I have the wings drawn out on them, I will see you guys back here. So it is a few days later and I'm back out here working on the plane. I actually picked up a new Dremel. The one I was using before actually quit working on me, and that's why I couldn't work on it for a few days, because I was waiting for the new one to come in. But now that the new one's in, let's get back to work. So where I left off, I was cleaning up all the rough edges, and I was going to draw out the template for the wings and the rear tail. So I've actually gone ahead and done that. It's actually been long enough that they've started getting some surface rust on them again. But as you can see, I drew out the rear tail and the wings. The way I drew these out was I measured the spark plug through the dimensions into Photoshop and then just played around with different sizes till I got a size I liked, printed that out, and then traced the paper. And that gave me these dimensions, where it's going to be something like that. Obviously the tail is going to be center, but I think those are the sizes that are good. I also picked up a set of these tungsten carbide burrs, so hopefully these will cut through the sheet metal pretty easily. I think they will. I've just never used these before, so we'll see how it goes. I've got the main wing cut out, and it took me a little bit of time. I just had to be patient and take my time with it. I think it came out alright. It's not perfect by any means. It's not perfectly symmetrical, so I might shave a little bit more off this bottom side right here. But after that, I'm going to take a metal file to it and just get all the sharp edge and the burrs off. This carbide bit, it worked perfect for this situation. If you're going to try this at home, just be sure to wear safety glasses and a respirator if you have one, because it kicks up a lot of just steel dust and small little slivers of steel. You don't want that in your eye or your lungs. Now this little piece is going to be kind of hard. There is a Sharpie for reference, so it's a very small piece. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to go about it yet, because there's not enough material to really clamp down to keep it steady. So I will figure out what I'm going to do and get back to you. Alright, so what I did was I took these needle nose vice grips and I wrapped the tips in electrical tape to try and prevent the teeth from gouging the material too much. And hopefully this is a decent way to hold it. The vice grips wrapped in electrical tape worked really well for cutting out the small rear tail. And what I also did on the spark plug, I created a small flat spot on the bottom side so that the main wing will have a good flat area to sit on while I weld it. And also give it a little bit of angle, which is what I want. I also took a metal file to both wings and got off all the sharp edges and kind of did a final shape on them. And now I'm ready to tack it to the actual fuselage, which is the spark plug. Got my welding machine ready to go, work lead clamped on. I'm going to try to set you up on this makeshift tripod that I've made and see if I can't get this thing tacked together. Alright, so I think that went pretty well. I'm just going to take my wire brush right there and clean it up a little bit, get some of the spatter and some of the flux off, because I'm running flux core right now. I don't have any gas, so I can't run MIG. I'm going to clean it up and then see how it looks. Alright, I think it cleaned up pretty well, so I'm going to go ahead and tack the tail on too. Man, I really wish I had gas so I could run MIG. It'd be so much easier than flux core. So I just gave the tail a light brush. I'm not going to get all the spatter off because I still got to do the vertical stabilizer, and that's just going to throw more spatter. So once I weld that on, then I'll come back and do a final cleanup. But I think before I do the vertical stabilizer, I'm going to figure out the landing gear, because I think it'll be easier to sit upside down like this without that vertical stabilizer on the back. So for the landing gear, I found some nails. I chopped the head and the point off and then gave them a slight bend. And then for the wheels, I found these tiny nuts, and I think those will work well. So what I'm going to do is slide the nuts on, weld them, probably chop off the excess, and then see how tall I want the actual gear to be, chop them at the height, and then weld them to the underside of the plane. Got them welded together, and I chopped the excess off, and now I'm going to put them up to the plane and see actually how high I want the plane to sit, and then cut the excess off of this shaft here. So the landing gear proved to be a little bit finicky. The material is so small that my welder was just doing more damage than good. So what I ended up doing was just mixing up a small batch of JB Weld and using a combination of JB Weld and super glue and then letting it cure overnight. Next, I'm going to try to tack on this tiny nut onto that rear tail to act as the rear landing gear. Alright, so I've got the back wheel tacked on. And what I've also done is I cut out what I'm going to use for the vertical stabilizer in the back. So all I did was I took a washer, chopped it basically in half, and then just slowly shaped it using my Dremel right there. Slowly shaped it into the shape I want. Let's see if you can get a good view. It's gonna sit something like that. I think that's going to work pretty well, so I'm going to see if I can't tack that on real quick. I actually think that worked really well. So I'm going to go ahead and clean it up, get as much spatter and crap off it as I can. I might add a few more little details, but then I'm going to hit it with some clear coat just to stop the surface rust on the steel. And then it'll be done. I added some small washers to the tips of the wings because I think it was a kind of cool detail that I could add. And now I'm going to hit it with a few coats of clear coat, but besides that, it is completely finished.
So, if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button and consider subscribing. I would really appreciate it. If you have any more recommendations for future projects that I could do, drop them in the comments and I'll be sure to check them out. Besides that, have a good day. Bye.